Now we've seen two scriptures that have outlined God's mission from the beginning of time, his plan to make both the church and the family on the same mission, to create new disciples, to go, to expand God's kingdom. And he puts this authority into both the family and the church. Now, let's check out what Jesus says about the very most important thing. You may remember the time when Jesus was asked, "Hey Jesus, what do you think is the most important command out of all the commands in Scripture? What's the most important?" Well, when Jesus answered this, he said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength." You remember that passage, right? Well, he actually was quoting an Old Testament reference in Deuteronomy chapter 6. And I'd like to look at that in a moment, because if Jesus said that this is the most important command, if it's the best summary of the entire law, that might be pertinent to our mission as members of a family and members of a church. Let's check it out. In Deuteronomy 6, this is when Moses is reminding the people of Israel of their covenant promises before they go into the promised land. They've been freed from slavery. They've been wandering in the wilderness. They're about to go into God's promised homeland for them. And Moses is reminding them, hey, this is what we are promising to do. This is what God's promising to do for us. This is what we're promising to do. And he says in verse 4, Israel, speaking to the whole people here, listen to me. The Lord is our God. He's declaring Yahweh is our God, not Baal, not Ashtoreth. The Lord is our God, and the Lord is one. He's going into an area where there's lots of other gods, very polytheistic. The Lord is one and only God. So love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul. Love him with all your strength. Everything you have needs to be all about loving God. This is the most important command, according to Jesus. Personally, I follow Jesus. I try to do what he says. So if you're trying to do what Jesus says this is the most important thing. Period. The end. Love God. How do you do that? How do you teach others to do that? If my mission as a discipler, according to Matthew 28, Genesis 1, is to help people love God, how do I do that? Well, let's keep reading verse 6 and 7. The commandments I give you today must be in your hearts. It's got to be something in here. Make sure your children, where did children come in? Make sure your children learn them. Talk about them when you're at home. Talk about them when you walk along the road. Speak about them when you go to bed. Speak about them when you get up. Where is this all coming from? Well, Moses is talking to the people of God as a whole here, and he's telling them, hey, if you want to love God, if you want to make disciples, you've got to get it in here in your heart. And how are you going to do this? Just by memorizing stuff? No. You've got to take this home. And instead of saying to the people, hey, make sure you send your kids to tabernacle school, or make sure you bring them by the high priest so they can teach your kid the Torah. No, he says, make sure your children learn about these. Talk about this at home. This passage of Scripture clearly lays out that the primary responsibility for spiritual formation of children is at the home. And they're supposed to be, parents were supposed to be doing this all the time, right? Mealtime, bedtime, travel time. This is where spiritual formation takes place, not just an hour of Sunday school or an hour of Wednesday night programming. It's supposed to be at home. And so as children's volunteers, as children's workers, as children's staff, we have a big responsibility, but not because this 60 minutes is going to necessarily change the child's life. Now, obviously, I hope that Sunday changes their life. I hope that it supplements everything that they're doing. But hear me clearly, the biggest spiritual influence is not going to be what happens in our churches for 90 minutes. It's going to be what's happening at home. What are they seeing modeled there? What are they hearing there? What are they practicing there? What habits are they getting into? That's where the real spiritual formation takes place. So if I, as a children's pastor, am only celebrating the 90 minutes that I have immediate control over, and I'm neglecting what goes on during the rest of the week at home, I am failing. As a children's volunteer, as a staff worker, let's not just measure our success by what happens on the weekend. Let's take a look at what's happening at home all throughout the week. That, according to Deuteronomy 6, is most important. Jesus said, this command, loving God, this is what it's all about. Here's how you're going to do that. It starts at home. So, as we look at another scripture yet in the next video, keep this in mind. My big win as a children's pastor, as a children's worker, as a children's staff member, is to help parents teach their children to love God. That's a win, according to Deuteronomy 6.